I had no idea what to do. Men were another thing that scared me. Yes, indeed. I drew the line at males. Yes. The late Diane Katon was an honorary Oscar winner. In 1972, Katon became famous for her iconic performance in The Paternal figure. Michael, that was an abortion. One of their sons. An offspring. Not only did she solidify her position in cinematic history with her partnership with Woody Allen in Annie, but I had to kill her because of this. She won the Oscar for Best Actress for her portrayal in Hall. Reportedly, she passed away at her California residence. Her 2 children will carry on Katon's legacy. That made her 79 years old. Effortlessly transforming suits and converted fedoras into style statements and elevated social awkwardness to the level of subtle power. It wasn't only that Diane Katon broke the mold. She flat out denied that it was there. Despite her recognizable laugh and huge spectacles, the woman behind them was far more nuanced than the public image. A lady whose weekly wine consumption once reached 25 bottles, who battled bulimia for 5 years, who loved profoundly yet was never loved back, who remained loyal to Woody Allen while everyone else abandoned him, who, after turning 50 years old, adopted 2 children and refused to accept the title of wife from anyone. It begs the question, why is Diane Keaton single? Why did she keep passing on the offers of marriage to men like Woody Allen and Al Pacino? How, therefore, did she become a legend after turning down all that Hollywood had envisioned for her? This goes beyond the narrative of a woman who chose to be single. It's about a person who changed the definition of independence and living life on their own terms. The true explanation for why Diane Keaton's life was never complete without a wedding. Diane Hall came into this world on January 5th in 1946 at the City of Angels in California. Her mother, Dorothy, was a stay-at-home mom who had unfulfilled artistic ambitions. Her father was a real estate dealer and civil engineer, and she grew up in a traditional Catholic environment. Dorothy triumphed in a beauty pageant and was named Mrs. Los Angeles as a measure of a mother's competence in the house. A mix of wonder and dread washed over little Diane at that moment. She envisioned her mother, all smiles as she stood on stage, her flawless chocolate cake and immaculate house serving as crowns. The splendor, however, was fleeting. That woman went back to the kitchen and her husband as soon as the lights went out, and instead settled for a life where ambitions in the arts and literature were subtly set aside. Diane would later remark that she experienced a mix of pride and fear. Despite her many artistic and literary talents, her mother chose not to pursue them. Diane was terrified that if she succeeded in being the perfect woman, it would lead to going away. Giving up your own tail to support another's was the price to pay. In light of this, Diane solemnly committed herself. She was not going anywhere. In her pursuit of familial unity, she would not compromise her own values. And if denying all expectations was necessary to keep her aspirations alive of the ideal woman, she was willing to pay the price. She didn't start off as the artist we know today. She attended Orange Coast College to pursue acting, and then she relocated to Manhattan, where she was born Diane Hall. She attempted to sign up with the Actors' Equity when, by checking with the group, she learned that the name Diane Hall had already been taken. As a statement of who she is, she decided to take her mother's maiden name, Katon. She appeared to signal that she will be the one remembered. Diane, who stood at 5 feet 7 inches tall with brown eyes that showed emotion and an undeniably eccentric charisma, to leave. She got her big break in the musical Hair on Broadway in 1968, right in the middle of the counterculture movement that was sweeping the country. Its legendary full-cast naked moment at the climax of Act 1 was the show's downfall. Not only did Diane not want to undress, offered an additional $50. It may have been a little act of rebellion, but it made a big impression. Instead of conforming, she would put on a show. She also met Woody Allen in that year. Intellectually, emotionally, and creatively, their chemistry was instantaneous. Although their romance was short, the bond they had lasted a lifetime. Annie Hall, a picture Allen penned specifically for her, was released in 1977. Being in that role was like looking into a mirror. Diane was the inspiration for the character's eccentricities, style, and rhythm. She took home an Oscar for the picture and catapulted her to stardom. But her insecurities remained, even after her celebrity. Diane battled bulimia behind the scenes, a secret she maintained for a long time. She binged on fried chicken, pie, and bread in one session before purging in total stillness. To deal with the burden of being observed without being genuinely known, it became a vicious cycle of humiliation and control. She was also a heavy drinker. She went on record as saying she drank 25 bottles of wine every week. It lacked glitz. Getting away was the deal. Al Pacino, Woody Allen, and Warren Beatty were among the men. Her affection for each of them was genuine and profound. Still, she was ultimately passed over by all of them. She never tied the knot, donned her white dress, or even went down the aisle. "I was reluctant to cede control of my own life, she exclaimed. "I preferred not to be defined by another person." Rather than that, she created her own life. She adopted 2 children by the time she was 50 years old. Without a partner and a plan, she became a mother and a parent, and she was never going to say sorry. Hollywood was perplexed by her. In the conventional sense, she lacked allure. Eternal youth and flawlessness were not her goals. She was unruly in her suit selection, off-topic in her speech, and laughed too loud. That, though, was her strength. She gave the impression that being different was predetermined, that being awkward was protective, and that oddness was captivating. While everyone else shied away, she stood up for Woody Allen. Not because she was completely in agreement, but because she valued loyalty. She did thought that human beings are multifaceted in nature, and that they are more than the sum of their negative press. Despite everything, she persisted in her task. Examples of films that praised strong, humorous, and imperfect women include Baby Boom, Father of the Bride, and Something's Gotta Give. To many, she represents rather than defying authority, but rather quietly standing firm in your own identity despite societal pressures to conform. This begs the question, why is Diane Katon single? She didn't feel complete, loved, or deserving in the absence of a wedding, a husband, or a title. It was she who made the decision, again and over again. She achieved an elusive status in the Hollywood industry as a result. An unrepentant aging woman who laughed uncontrollably and lived a life free of regret. This goes beyond the narrative of a woman who chose to be single. It's quite the account of a lady who maintained her integrity, her words from her lips with ease. "That won't happen on my watch. Not because I'm scared. That's not who I am." Diane Keaton was still cast in the role despite her reluctance. She was quite impressed. She opted for genuineness during a time when conformity was valued. However, not all requests were so lightly denied. To keep a role, Katon was asked to reduce roughly 10 pounds when she was just 19 years old. That seemingly insignificant request had a profound impact on the theater industry. A fight that would last 5 years began then as a result of binge eating disorder. Diane, like many other young women of her time, started abusing her body in an effort to conform to societal standards. The stage necessitated flawlessness. It hurt because of her. What she failed to realize was that there was a man sitting in the crowd that night who that would have a profound impact on her life shortly. Someone who would become her most loyal collaborator in her creative endeavors and who would also assist her in weathering the storm. Alan Woody. Following Hair, Diane tried out for Alan's play Play It Again, Sam. She played the lead role in Thea neurotic protagonist's romantic partner. Hilarious, quick on their feet, and able to turn clumsiness into a charm. It was all summed up by Diane. However, one worry remained. Alan was shorter than her by 2 inches. Because of his concerns that the height disparity will detract from the visual dynamic. When Diane entered the room, she immediately began to dispel all doubts by opening her mouth. She was nominated for Best Featured Actress at the Tonys after winning the role and giving a riveting performance. Alan and she had dinner not long after rehearsals started, and they started a long-lasting artistic and personal partnership. These two weren't your typical Hollywood power couple. Attempts at seduction were not made by Diane. She was authentically herself. Plus, Alan's innate artistic abilities allowed him to see Katon was unusual among Hollywood actors. She embodied an altogether other essence. Diane soon after made her big-screen debut in 1970's Lovers and Other Strangers. Then the role that altered the course of events arrived. She was cast as Kay by Francis Ford Coppola. Adams starred in 1972's The Godfather. Coppola found what he was looking for in her, even though she wasn't a recognizable face. An innocence that wasn't naive, and a coolness that attracted others. Part of one of the most famous movies of all time, Diane Katon played the role of the quirky girl from Broadway entered Hollywood formally. She had an erratic start to her career. She wasn't seeking affirmation. She was unconcerned with conforming to societal norms. However, it was this eccentric trait that started to draw in influential filmmakers, notably Portrayal. He noticed something about Katon that nobody else did while casting The Godfather. Unspoken vulnerability encased in silent might. An independent femininity that didn't need anyone's approval to shine. She was personally invited to perform Kay by Coppola, despite her relative obscurity and the fact that some thought she was too eccentric. Adams, please. Although many were divided over his decision, time ultimately vindicated him. Marlon Brando, Robert Duvall, and Al Pacino weren't the only actors immortalized by The Godfather. It deftly introduced Diane Keaton as someone who must be a part of controlled by males. Instantly, the picture was a smashing success. However, Keaton's position was genuinely fleshed up in 1974's The Godfather Part 2. She came back as Kay, the lady who had pledged to live a life free of crime. Surprisingly, it was embraced by Michael Corleone's shadow, confronted with emotional isolation and locked doors. The focus wasn't on her. Even though there weren't any confrontations or speeches, viewers experienced a rare emotion in that violent universe whenever she made an appearance. Power and its inhumane toll on humanity. Among the most memorable scenes is when Kay confesses. Not because she was sick, but because she couldn't bear another child without Michael, she chose to have an abortion. They severed more than just their friendship at that moment. The Corleone empire was finally rejected. The last scene, in which Michael silently shuts the door behind her, is still one of the most terrifying scenes in film history. There were no shouts or gunshots, just looks and quiet. In that stillness, Diane Keaton became the tragic tragedy's emotional beating heart. Beyond critical praise, The Godfather Part 2 changed cinema forever. Francis Ford Coppola took home the trophy for Best Picture, Robert De Niro for Best Supporting Actor, the Oscar for Best Original Score, and the Golden Globe for Best Art Direction. Robert De Niro was named Best in his role as well. According to Roger Ebert, it is a masterwork of American tragic event. Its ratings were almost flawless in time and empire. Not including home video and digital earnings, the domestic box office grossed more over $93 million on a budget of $13 million, which was astronomical for the period. Diane Keaton's unassuming presence in the picture, rather than her deliberate pursuit of becoming a feminist icon, without shame, she made an indelible mark. It would be remiss to leave out Kay Adams, even though Part 3 isn't as revered as Parts 1 and 2. Despite her lack of affiliation with the mafia, she served as a constant reminder of the extent to which brutality may manifest. Price tag. Over the course of 3 decades, Diane Keaton provided the film with its last moral compass. If The Godfather is indeed an American tragedy about power, sacrifice, and betrayal. Diane Keaton's star began to rise after Annie Hall, if The Godfather served as a springboard. The film was an ambitious 150-minute experiment full with tangents and scrapped sections when it was originally called Anhedonia. Marshall Brickman, a co-writer, was so concerned that it was impossible to change. Woody Allen painstakingly reworked the script in post-production to make it a concentrated, emotionally powerful story of the relationship among Annie and Alvy. Raw, personal, and groundbreaking, the final cut lasted just 93 minutes. Production took 10 months, and some scenes were either cut or reworked. We had to leave out the philosophical basketball game and the doctor who played the cello so that the rhythm would stay clarity. If you want to see how editing can shape a film into a masterpiece, Annie Hall is a prime example. Not only was Annie Hall named Best Picture, Director, and Original Script, but Diane Keaton was named Best Actress. An additional 5 BFTAs and a Laureate Award. It was selected Best Picture of the Year by the National Society of Film Critics. According to Roger Ebert, it is a masterwork of contemporary romantic comedy. The film's costume, rather than its plot, may have had the most lasting cultural impact. The costume notes were disregarded by Keaton when she dressed. She lent the part her unique flair. Loose ties, fedoras, vests, slouchy pants, and oversized shirts. Woody Allen was hesitant at first, but he eventually allowed her to lead. A few items belonged to Ralph Lauren, but Katon was solely responsible for the styling. Diane Keaton went from being the eccentric heroine of Annie Hall to a multi-talented actor in no time, embracing the most primal aspects of human feeling, never trying to outdo anyone or follow the latest fad. Diane Keaton, though, has always been more than an actor. The woman formerly dabbled in providing guidance. Reviews for Unrung Heroes 1995 were good. Even if she didn't go on in that direction, the picture demonstrated her ability to produce stories that were thoughtful, sensitive, and emotionally intelligent. She walked about with a camera for hours when she wasn't filming, capturing the essence of regular moments with the fixation of an artist who saw beauty in the mundane, such as street corners, peaceful houses, and passing moments. She lived with courage. Her love was profound. She brought up her kids in her own unique way. She was there for her pals when it was difficult. Gracefully and with grit, she aged. And Diane was obviously Diane throughout. You don't require a wedding to feel whole, fame to feel appreciated, or a screenplay to understand your value as her narrative shows us. All it takes is a dash of style and a little guts. A legacy of films isn't all that Diane Keaton left behind. Her legacy is an example of genuineness and a call to embrace one's uniqueness rather than belittle it. A blessing, and that subtle words can carry the most weight at times. For the hats, the honesty, and the laughs, Diane, I am grateful. You were an inspiration, not simply an actor. That, more than anything else, is what makes an icon. If you were moved or inspired by this tale, curiosity, make sure you subscribe, hit that like button, and enable notifications so you never miss another in-depth look at the lives of the historical figures that made their mark. The unsung but unforgettable tales, the ones that happen behind the scenes, are what we'll keep bringing you. Our next goal is to feel free to reply. Leave a comment with your ideas.